If you have a few £1,000s or dollars to spend on a new road bike, then you are going to be in the vicinity of some very nice carbon bikes. But is that the best way to spend your money? These two bikes are identical in spec, but this one is carbon and this one is aluminium, and this one costs £1,000 less. The sensible money would likely opt for the aluminium bike, but does the carbon frame offer a tangible improvement in performance or ride quality? We're here to help you decide on how to choose between an aluminium road bike and a carbon road bike. We'll guide you through the differences in the frame material, pit these two bikes against each other, and as a bonus, show you how you could upgrade the aluminium bike with the money you saved. But before we do all of that, I'd like to thank Trek, our sponsor for this video, who have lent us these two lovely Emonda road bikes. Right, I best go and get some kit on. Before I do any riding though, let's take a moment to cover some of the fundamentals of each material. There are myths to bust and factors that you might not have considered. We'll start with which one is fastest. Neither is faster than the other per se, but it is easier to form complex aero tube shapes and the junctions between them from carbon than it is to do so from aluminium. Even high-end aluminium frames where camtail aero tube shaping is used are limited to how aero they can be while still being light enough to appeal to customers. So as a general rule, the fastest aero road bikes are typically made from carbon fibre. But that's not to say that the latest and most advanced aluminium bikes don't have aero touches. We'll reveal the weights of these two later on, but for now, I want to focus on tube construction, as frame weight depends largely on the grade of each material that you're comparing. Aluminium tubes are usually butted. This is where the tube wall steps down in thickness as it moves away from a high stress area. A tube can be single, double or triple butted, or simply have no butting at all. The more a tube is butted, the lighter it will be, as there is less material. Higher end aluminium frames use a process called hydroforming. This is where high pressure fluid and a mould are used to shape the tube. Carbon frames, meanwhile, are made by layering up many sheets of carbon fibre and resin. This is called prepeg, with different grades and orientations used in different places on the frame. This prepeg carbon is then taken by the brands and laid up in different ways to mould to form a frame. Depending on the quality of carbon used and the amount of resin, you can get lighter or heavier frames. At the more affordable price points, carbon frames can actually be heavier than a high quality aluminium frame. But as the price of the frame increases, the quality of the carbon layup follows and the weight will come down. The result is that a high-end carbon frame will nearly always be the lightest option, but that will cost you. The fact that carbon is used for mountain bike frames is testament to how strong it actually is, but it can quite easily be damaged if not treated with respect, so it can be easily crushed in areas such as quick-release dropouts. That's why carbon bikes often have metal dropouts or inserts for through axles, or include metal protectors for these areas. Bangs and bashes can also cause damage to the interior of frame tubes, which may not be visible from the exterior and which can cause a frame to break unexpectedly. If your carbon frame has had a bash or a heavy crash, you should get it inspected before riding it again. It may require ultrasound or X-ray inspection to actually detect the internal damage. Thankfully, getting a carbon frame repaired is easier than you might think. Aluminium frames, on the other hand, are typically regarded as being more durable and are often preferred by budget-conscious amateur racers as a result. But repairing alloy is a fairly complex job. Right, now it's time to take a closer look at the two bikes here. In this example, what we have is two identically spec'd bikes. With a Shimano 105 mechanical group set, these are the kind of bikes that riders may be pitting against one another when looking for a mid-range ride. But one costs £2,325 and the other is £3,250. So where do you actually spend your money? And how do you pick between carbon and aluminium to find the best bike for your riding and budget? Let's start with looks. This is the easiest comparison to make, and it forms a massive part of why people buy a certain bike. Comparing these bikes visually, I'd say that there is very little to separate them. Okay, once you get up really close, you can see some differences in the tube shapes, but both have very clean lines and I like the look of both. Carbon is easier for manufacturers to mold into complex shapes, so you'll see more angles as we have on this chunky down tube. But a high-end aluminium frame that is well finished will be free of ugly weld marks, and I think that this one is rather lovely. Personally, I do prefer the way that carbon tubes can be made to flow into each other, so a carbon frame is nicer in my eyes to look at, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. For some riders, the wow factor of carbon is also hard to overlook, but for others, the extra expense that comes with it just won't be worth it. The next easiest thing to do, and I bet you've done this just like I have, is to pick up the bike and comment on the weight. Well, I've had these on the scales, so let's reveal all. The aluminium bike weighs 9.02 kilos. The carbon bike, with exactly the same spec, I might remind you, weighs 8.89 kilos. So, a narrow win for the carbon bike there. But why does weight matter? Well, if you've ever spent a winter on a heavy training bike before jumping onto a lighter race bike in the spring, you'll know how good the latter feels. The bike feels more responsive, it can feel faster, and that, to most people, feels better. However, weight is only part of the overall picture. As we've learnt in recent years, if you actually want to go really fast, then aerodynamic improvements are what will really help you. The place where weight matters the most is when climbing steep hills, but how much does it actually matter? It might surprise you to learn that these two bikes are very similarly matched when it comes to climbing performance. If I ride this hill on both bikes, maintaining the same power in an even output, the 130 gram weight difference would only be worth a few seconds. But that's not the full story. If you get out of the saddle and attack a climb on a high-end carbon frame, and that is the key here, high-end carbon, with its better stiffness to weight ratio, can feel like it accelerates more sharply. That's going to allow you to carry more speed through a steep section or just kick away from your mates. There's a reason why the pros ride carbon bikes in the Tour de France, and balancing lightweight, aero and stiffness characteristics is key to that. The toughest factor to measure in the real world is compliance. This is the level to which the bike soaks up little bumps that are caused by imperfections in the road surface. Compliance is a really important feature of a road bike, as none of us get to sail over perfectly smooth, new tarmac for the entirety of our ride. And the truth is, if you are isolated from nasty road buzz, you'll be less fatigued towards the end of your ride. Aluminium frames got a bad reputation in the past for being harsh. They deserved it. They were in many cases really uncomfortable. But these days, construction methods have improved and a high-end aluminium frame can get really close to carbon. Carbon too can give a harsh ride if the layup is wrong, but my subjective opinion on these two bikes with the same tyre pressure is that the difference is minimal. While we're talking tyre pressure, the clearance of any frame and how wide your tyres are will play a big part in determining the comfort of a bike. We've seen a big leap forward here in recent years, Both of these bikes have clearance for 28mm tyres, and there's space to go wider. Now, I said at the start of the video that you could spend the money saved on the Aluminium bike on some upgrades. For the money saved, we've got a set of deep section carbon wheels which really make the bike look fast just sitting here. And they are not just eye candy either. An aero wheel set like this will actually help you to ride faster, but there are other ways to spend your money. You could get some nice new kit, upgrade your computer, add a power meter, or instead of upgrading, enter some events. So, should you splash all of your cash in one go, or spend less initially and leave yourself money for upgrades? That is a tough call. If you're just looking to make the most from your money, then the premium Aluminium bike may well be the way to go. You just can't beat them for value, and despite losing some of the allure of carbon, they're still brilliant bikes. But if a carbon frame, just like the Pros, has your heart, then it's worth investing the cash initially. Depending on the bike, there might be a weight or aero gain too. You can then upgrade at a later date if you think it needs a fancier wheel set or new parts, but you'll need to get saving again. Which way would you go? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks again to Trek for helping us to make this video. We'll see you in the next one.